Erin, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Erin Saiki. I am a superintendent with DPR Construction in the Bay Area.
Beautiful, beautiful. Can you walk us through your path, how you got into construction? I know you started off at civil engineering at UC Berkeley, and you're now a superintendent at DPR.
Absolutely. So I started out thinking that I was going to go into structural engineering. So I went into Berkeley pursuing a civil engineering degree. I did an internship with DPR in 2018. I was super fortunate. DPR came to our school and did an info session, and then I was immediately really interested in what they were doing. And so I ended up doing a summer internship with them and fell in love with construction and realized right after that, I no longer wanted to be going the structural engineer route. So I ended up getting my degree, graduating, and hiring on with DPR full-time as a project engineer, which is the primary path when you get hired out of college for most construction companies.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.
So I was hired on as a project engineer, and within the first 4 to 5 months, really felt like I was being pulled more into the field. My skills were better suited for the field. I was more passionate and excited to come to work, to be spending time out on site, as opposed to being more in an office environment. So I was fortunate to be able to make the switch. DPR has a program that allows us to do a field engineer route, which is essentially the mirror image of a PE, where a PE goes to project management, a field engineer goes to superintendent. And so that really started me on my path to becoming a superintendent, which I am now.
That path that you described for college folks is a very familiar one, right? You go to school, you're structural engineering or construction management or something like that. You go PE, PM, and then let's see where it goes from there. So as you were beginning your career, what was it that you were finding out in that first 4 to 5 months that began to change your perspective on where you would like to go with your career?
It was really getting to see the actual work in the field and getting to understand it. We try and teach that to project engineers, but a lot of it is looking at drawings. But ultimately, where I was really able to make it click in my head was seeing it actually get installed. And so that's really where it made more sense to me, the way that I learn, the style that I learn, being able to touch things and tactily feel and experience and see all of that was what made it click for me in my head. And naturally that lent itself to me wanting to be out in the field a lot more, talking with all the craft, understanding how everything is built. So yeah, that's really what drew me that way and what made me realize that my skills and the way that I learn is better suited for the field rather than what I was doing in the office, which was a lot more looking at drawings, but not really making the full connection to what it would look like in the field.
As you were making that transition into the field, what was it like coming from a background where you don't have any trade experience?
Nerve-wracking. Definitely a little nerve-wracking, but the most powerful tool I think someone has in the field is curiosity. And so I tried to go in with a mentality of asking a lot of questions and finding that you don't need to know everything. No one knows everything. I know many awesome superintendents that don't know everything, and really what it comes down to is asking questions and being really tenacious and being able to chase down answers. So I was definitely nervous to not have that background and skill in the craft and in the trades and in building, but I knew that I was curious and eager and ready to learn, and I would ask a lot of questions, and people were very excited to give answers. And it's an awesome part of our industry. People take a lot of pride in what they do, and they're very excited to explain that to you. So having that mentality, I think, was all I really needed. And once I kind of got comfortable with knowing I don't need to know everything, I just need to have a good attitude and ask the right questions, the rest of it came.
And so how long have you been a superintendent?
About 4 years now, 3 to 4 years now, yeah.
Okay, so you were a field engineer and then you became a superintendent. What was your first day as a superintendent like, especially, again, stepping in? It's one thing to be on the job site and to be curious and to be helping people solve their problems, but then now you're in a leadership role. What was that like?
Definitely an experience about finding my voice. I think by asking all those questions, I had developed the knowledge I needed to do the role. So there definitely wasn't a lack of necessarily having the know-how or knowing what the sequence should be. And like I had that confidence in myself, and I had built that by asking all those questions and spending all that time out in the field for the first few years of my career. Really what it came down to after that is standing in a room full of foremen and being able to confidently walk through what we need to be doing on site. And that came down to my own voice and finding that and feeling confident in that and creating a culture and style where we're all kind of in it together and creating a space that's really collaborative, because that's ultimately the only way that I'm able to achieve success. My background doesn't really let me have the ability to walk in and just say, this is how we're going to do it, because I could get gut checked any time of the day by anyone that's actually building. If I came in with that style, they could totally look at me and be like, you've never done this. How can you say that? You don't know anything. Like that style would set me up to have some really crunchy conversations. So I try and circumvent that early by going in and having a collaborative approach so that the tone is much more like, hey, how are we going to do this? What do you think? Have you considered this? And asking all the questions so that the room just ultimately becomes a big conversation. And that's really what it needs to be. And so, yeah, coming on my first day, it was knowing I knew how to ask the right questions, but learning how to have that voice and that style and developing that to be able to do what I do now.
That concept of finding your voice, what do you mean by that?
I think it's really knowing what your tools are and your style is, and being able to, when you're faced with any kind of conflict or opposition or questions, that you know how to respond in a way that you can see through. So like if I get asked questions, it's not just like freeze, no idea how to respond, no idea, like even if I don't know, having no idea what to do. It's being collected and having the confidence to know, okay, yeah, let's go talk to the structural engineer. Or I know the next step needs to be, let's go look at this in the model. Or hey, let's go take a field walk. And being able to just have that voice and that reaction to know how to respond. It definitely takes time to develop that and to feel secure in that, because just like anything, the more you do it, the more confident you get, the more practice you have. But those first couple of days on the job, yeah, definitely I would kind of look around the room and make sure, like look at my senior superintendent and be like, am I doing this right? Are we aligned? But now I can run a meeting and confidently run any kind of scheduling meeting or whatever I need to do without necessarily having all of that support around me that I had when I was first starting.
So when you're in one of those meetings and you're describing this collaborative style of leadership, how do you balance that with when a decision actually has to be taken? Because I understand this concept of getting feedback from the foreman. Foremen have tons more experience than you do. You don't want to come across as a know-it-all when you don't have that background.
Absolutely.
But you are the superintendent. And so there does come a point where you have to make a call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely don't want to get stuck in analysis paralysis or like everyone has what's best for them. But ultimately, not everyone can get 100% of what they need, and we all need to make compromises. And so you definitely have situations like that every day where it's like, hey, this is best for one trade, but it's not as good for another. And it's being able to kind of see the big picture and step back. And really what it is, which maybe it helps that I don't have that building experience. What it is kind of not having a bias towards any one trade and being able to look at it holistically. Because I'm not, let's just say if I came from a plumbing contractor and I was a plumber, or if I came from an iron worker trade partner and I was an iron worker, I might have a natural affinity to want to be like, let's make this work for so-and-so. But because I don't really have that, I think it's stepping back and being like, I hear you. I totally get isn't 100% of what you want, but this is what the job needs. And usually when you explain the why of like, yes, this would be better for you, but I know because of how we're loading the building or because of who's coming after you, this is why it has to be the way we're going. People are usually pretty understanding of that. Just taking the time to kind of go around the room, hear all the voices, and then hear each other and what we need, and being active listeners to what everyone in the room needs makes it a little bit easier to understand why you can't get your way in some situations. And then ideally in other situations, you do get what you need. So I think, yes, at the end of the day, the job of the super, you have to make a call. That is what it comes down to. But I am more confident in being able to make a good, educated call when I've heard all the voices. Because at that point, I'm just taking myself out of the picture, saying, okay, what's best for the job? I've heard everyone's voices. I have all the information. Now let's make the best objective decision.
Why do you think you were promoted to a superintendent?
I have the ability to see what the job needs as a whole and be able to sequence what the job needs and be able to see the whole build.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a superintendent needs to be able to understand the build and needs to be able to sequence the build. So I like to think that I have that skill, even though I myself have not spent any time building or being a tradesperson.
Yep.
In addition to that, I'd like to think that our industry is changing and there's a need for more diverse voices in every field, including the superintendent role. And DPR has always been very, very at the forward front of innovation and change and diversity. And I think there is something to acknowledge there. A lot of people, I think, don't want to hear that you get a role because of just who you are, but there is some reality there that diversity is needed and different perspectives are needed. And I think at least with what the landscape is right now, where there are so many superintendents that have come from a trade route, and there's not that many superintendents that have come from an engineering background, I'd like to think that I bring a different voice to most teams that I'm on, and that is a plus or an addition. To the team.
How would you describe the changes that are happening in construction that you were just talking about?
I think there are 2 or 3 primary changes that are really in full force right now. And I think I'm super fortunate because my background and skill set fit right in. And so it's like golden opportunity of the stars aligning and what the industry is doing, I can bring. And I think those things are, there's much more focus on voices and psychological safety and culture on site. There is a change in the industry where more and more general contractors and more sites are paying attention to how we are treating our people. And that is something that, as an empathetic person, I think I fit right into.
What do you mean by psychological safety?
So psychological safety, we talk a lot about safety on site, right? And it's always like, oh, falls and there's a big crane or electrocution. Like we do a lot of dangerous work on site. But psychological safety has been becoming more and more part of the conversation about how mentally everyone feels at work, because that ultimately comes through in the work that they're doing. And if you are not mentally in a safe space where you can speak up, you're not going to be reporting things that are potentially hazardous. You might feel like, hey, if I report this, I'm going to be either let go or fired or shamed or whatever, or people are going to think I'm weak and that I'm just not toughing it out and all those things. And so it does ultimately downstream affect physical safety as well. But psychological safety is really building a culture on site where we are treating people like people, the craft on site like people. It's about listening when they have concerns, creating a culture where 1, they can bring up the concern, but 2, that you're actually listening and you'll follow through with an action to address those concerns. And I'd like to think about it a little bit like not accepting things as this is just how we do it,
right?
Or that's just how it's done. Or that's how we've done it for 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. It's kind of just a mental way of checking in and saying, hey, we don't have to accept it because it's just been that way. Let's encourage people to bring up new ideas, new solutions, and create an environment where people feel comfortable doing it. So that ultimately is kind of what I think of as that shift in culture where we are really listening to the workers on site. We are working at DPR to make sure that every site has plumbed restrooms where porta-johns have been kind of the standard for years, but we're working so that now everyone can use a restroom that has running water. And just basic things that, again, it's very easy to say, well, everyone's just done it that way. But does that mean we have to keep doing it that way?
How do you balance this concept of psychological safety with performance on the job site?
They go hand in hand because when people are bringing things up, they are able to perform better, ultimately. We want to have a productive job. We want to have a job that people can do their things quickly and people don't have roadblocks to their work. And that comes from being able to remove constraints. But if people are not bringing those up and feeling like they can be really vocal without being punished, those things go kind of unseen. And so it's just as simple as someone being like, hey, this job is not clean. We need to be way better. Like, this is unsafe to be having all of this debris around, and that will impact a change that will ultimately make the job more productive. People will tell you what they need. You just have to be willing to hear it and then do something about it. So I think the two of them actually go hand in hand. When you have a psychological safe job, morale is good. People want to be there. People want to work for you. People want to do good work and take pride in their work. If the job looks clean and spotless and it looks like someplace you want to show up, you don't want to be the person that is making it look like trash. You want to be part of that holy moly, this whole team is like a well-oiled machine. They're doing a great job. You want to be part of that. Psychological safety isn't just about that mental side. It will show up in every other aspect of the job as well.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed. Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today.
Can you share a specific example where your collaborative leadership style solved a problem that might not have been caught with a more traditional command and control approach?
Yeah, it's hard to think of specific examples. It's more of a daily attitude.
Like a vibe.
Yeah, I think more people are just willing to bring up problems and questions to you that you never would have heard if you had a command and control approach that didn't feel open to being questioned. And being questioned isn't a bad thing, and it took me a little while to have an ego check. I think it's necessary for people to remain really humble in the process, but questioning is good. Because if you can answer those questions, you know you're solid. But if there's not a good reason for why you're doing something or you can't answer it, which ultimately makes you automatically put like defenses up. Like, oh no, someone's questioning me and you don't have a good response, it makes you defensive. But we really want to flip that mentality and be like, okay, it's making me defensive because I feel like I missed something, but that means I missed something. So what did I miss and what can we do to address that? And so it's hard for me to pinpoint specific examples. It's more just in general. I have a lot of foremen very willing to just come up and ask me questions. It's great. It's really, really awesome. And I've also seen it where those foremen will tell me, I'm coming to you to ask this question because I can't go to someone else to ask this question because I don't have that same relationship or I don't have that same ability to approach them because of the style that they're using, which is always really rewarding to hear, but it's also kind of eye-opening to know that if I didn't have that style, it would have just remained unknown. It would have been silent. They probably wouldn't have brought it up. Also, I would say, honestly, I don't think I would be a superintendent today if I had a command and control approach. I don't think I would have been promoted to a superintendent because I don't think if I had had a command and control approach, I would have been successful in what I was doing to be recognized to be promoted.
Why do you say that?
Because if I came in with that style right from day one, no one would have taken the time, I think, to teach me because I think they automatically would have seen me as someone that thinks they know more or thinks that I know better when I actually don't. Yes. And I have no credentials to back it up. I really don't. That is the quote unquote downside of becoming a superintendent without any craft experience or without any trade experience. I really don't have the credentials to back anything up that I'm saying other than I have just learned this by everyone around me telling me how they do their work and listening to them. So if I came in right from day one and said, hey, this is how you're going to do it, I think I would have been shot down every day of the week by every foreman I worked with. And they would tell me, get out of here. Like, I don't even want to hear it. You don't know what you're talking about.
You describe a situation it comes up where someone comes to you and they're sharing something with you that they can't share with someone else. How do you handle that situation when you know that person really needs to have the conversation with the other person that they're not talking to yet?
Absolutely. It's not always a fun conversation to have. And depending on the situation, sometimes I would tiptoe a little bit around it and be like, hey, so-and-so brought this up to me because I was right there. And so it's more of a proximity thing.
Yeah.
But at some point, to really see growth and change, I have to give that feedback to whoever it is that I'm working with, and letting them know on both ends, hey, one, I know this is a difficult person to work with, or I know this person has a different style and they might not be open to listening, but you got to give them a shot.
Right.
Because if we don't even give them that opportunity to show you what they can do or what their response would be, you're closing the door before you're even trying.
Yeah.
On the flip side, it's also being able to have conversations with other team members and saying like, hey, for feedback, so-and-so brought this up to me, and I know it's because they feel more comfortable with my approach. I don't know if this is a blind spot for you or if this is something that you can think about or address, but giving that feedback, which is hard to do, but ultimately is the only way that something's going to change.
How do you manage yourself going into those conversations? Because like you described, that's a difficult thing to do, particularly if you're, as you describe yourself, a collaborative person. Going up to someone who's more command and control, it could be intimidating, it could just be uncomfortable.
I've actually been going through a lot of coaching. DPR has a lot of internal coaching.
That's cool.
Where I have like outside people that are not on our projects or on our job sites that I can ask for help and kind of run by them. And a lot of the time it's just telling myself I can only control what I can control. And that's sometimes what stops me from having conversations. I found through my coaching is that in my head, I'll just be like, well, this is the response and and I'll get in my head that it's not even worth having the conversation. And it really comes back to I can only control what I can do. And in this moment, the only thing I can do is give this feedback. How it's received ultimately will never be something I can dictate, but I have to do my part and have that conversation. Sometimes it doesn't go well, and that's okay, but at least I know, and I can go home and sleep at night and know like, hey, I tried my best in that situation.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I know the job as a whole will get done, and those foremen will continue to talk to me, and we'll still address all the problems. It's not the most efficient way of going about things, but we're all growing, and no one's perfect. And so if that's something that we need to kind of work around, that's something that we're going to work around. But for sure, those conversations definitely take a little bit of deep breathing beforehand and some mental preparation and reminding myself I can only control what I can control. But it has been a huge learning and coaching process for me really over the past 2 years. I've gotten a lot better about facing those conversations kind of head on instead of circling the bush for 2 weeks before I have the conversation. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell me 2 weeks ago? I was working up the courage to do it.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. You're someone who uses robotics and BIM and VDC on job sites. How do you bridge the gap between cutting edge technology and traditional craft workers who might be kind of skeptical about using these tools?
Technology and innovation is something that, again, is really coming up in construction and really aligns with my skill set and background. And so I am very fortunate that this is the era that we're in where more and more owners and more projects are open and wanting to use BDC and robotics and push the limits on innovation. But to your point, that does cause some trade workers to be very skeptical about what we are using, and the thought really is they don't want to be replaced. They are worried about their livelihood. They are worried about running out of work, and that is totally fair. I think the ways that we circumvent that is training and awareness, educating folks about not just the broad concept of robotics as a whole, like, hey, these robots are going to take your job, but what are these robots specifically doing? And right now, all the robots we're pretty much using need a person to run them, to operate them. And so like we have layout robots on site, they are operated by carpenters. And so our carpenters are still doing the layout work. It is just in tandem with a robot. Similarly, there's some innovations with framing styles. Hyperframe is something that DPR has recently been using and trying out, which is a new framing system that speeds up work. And it's a change to what we've been doing, but ultimately a lot of these robotics increase production, or that's the goal. And what it comes down to, again, training and awareness is realizing if we are more productive, we are going to be cheaper, which means we are going to win more jobs, which means we are going to be able to put you to work. And so it kind of makes a full circle, and it's a little bit hard to get there. But if we are too expensive and other people are getting faster and cheaper, they're going to win the work. And that's really where we're going to see us not having work for people. And so increases in productivity ultimately make the circle around us getting jobs, which is going to put you back into work. The other part of that really is, I like the term that we sometimes are using, cobotics. It's not robotics. It's a robot that is working in tandem with you. It is to augment you in the field. And that's really the types of robotics that DPR is getting into and that the industry is looking at. We want to be making things that make your job easier, not necessarily. There's I can't think of any robot really that is fully automated, doesn't see any kind of in tandem field worker.
Yes.
And then the last part of that I'll add on is a lot of the innovations that we are really pushing for are safety related. If we can take someone out of a situation that would be potentially risky from a safety perspective and replace that with a piece of metal doing the work and taking the risk, that is a huge benefit. We are piloting robots that will flip breaker switches when we're energizing so that a worker is not physically having to touch the breaker that could arc flash and kill someone or injure someone. So we've been piloting, like, an electrician will operate a robot that is physically doing the switch move, but it takes them completely out of the bodily harm of that work. And those kinds of innovations in robots, I think, are worth their weight in gold, because at the end of the day, yes, you want work, but you also need to go home safe. And it means nothing for you to have work and go to work if you're going to go home injured. So those types of innovations, I think everyone should see as a huge plus.
It's interesting because you're taking the time then to give the business case to the foreman for the technology. Obviously,
Yes.
The safety piece is in some ways self-explanatory, but necessary to be described. But the business case is something that can really help them to understand the benefits of the technology. Is that something you have to consistently communicate, do you find, or is it sort of a one-time thing? How do you guys handle that?
It's fairly consistent because as we're bringing on and piloting new technologies, we're always having those conversations. It's also really cool because, again, environment that we're in is a lot of new things are coming out. We are putting these things in the hands of our craft workers and asking for feedback. So it's not, they're seeing the whole process through as well. They can give feedback on a lot of the stuff that we're doing. And it's not just like, hey, one day we show up and we're like, here's this fully developed thing. Here you are. They are getting the early versions of it and giving their input so that ultimately it makes their job more effective. It's not a worker, it's a tool for the worker to use, whether it be to mitigate safety risk or whether it be to be more productive. But yes, I think it's super awesome that we have those conversations and have a little transparency on the business side with folks, because if you don't, you're in the dark. And I get why they're skeptical and I get why they have those thoughts, because no one explained to them why we're pushing for it. And they think you're just, coming after their job. But we need to get faster. We need to get cheaper. That's what owners are expecting. And this is how we're going to continue to win work so that you can keep working.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them. Over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book. And it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview.
How does getting involved early in the design phase change your effectiveness as a superintendent compared to the traditional approach?
I love this question. It is something I am a huge advocate for. Our superintendents getting involved early. I always am really disappointed on projects where I come in mid-phase and there wasn't a superintendent early in the design phase, because I can see it day one I walk on site knowing, man, if we had someone with a constructability building mind that had been in here early, I would not be writing nearly as many RFIs or having nearly as many questions. I can be 10 times more impactful in the design phase than I will ever be in the actual build phase, because I can prevent issues before we ever get there. There never needs to be a conversation if I can hit it from the front and get in early and see the design be involved in the design, be involved in the VDC coordination and the BIM coordination, flying around the model and seeing it all, because when they're all detailing, I can be like, hey, no, I'm not going to have access to be able to do that safely, or I'm not going to be able to get a scissor lift in there. Is there any way we can flip this around, or can we change this detail? And by the time it gets out to the field, no one ever hears about it because it was already fixed. And so then we don't have to stop to wait for an RFI, or we don't have to stop to change the design. We're already there. And so being able to factor in safety and productivity and ease of install early into the design is, again, worth its weight in gold. That being said, I will say not every superintendent has the skill set to be in all of those meetings or in the model or in some of the ways that we design.
Yeah.
I think regardless, any superintendent can bring value at that stage, but effectiveness of it increases the more technological skills I think you have at that stage, because you can be self-sufficient in the model yourself and go find things yourself versus having to see someone else fly everything and do everything for you. You can kind of do it yourself. But yes, we do try to get superintendents in early, as long as budget, schedule, all that kind of work out there. I also think it's super powerful to get a superintendent in early, because we can learn early what the design intent is. Ultimately, it makes us understand when we're building what the owner and architect want.
Yeah.
We've been involved in that whole process and we know exactly what the users want and exactly what the architect was going for and exactly what the owner wanted when they first started thinking about this place. And we know their design intent right from the start. And so when you're making calls in the field later, again, like you said, hey, when all these people are asking all these questions or they want to do things different ways, for me to know hey, you know what, the reason why this has to go here is because the owner is really expecting that their doctors can come in and use this space for this reason. Or, hey, it's really important that we're doing this because this is a key feature for the architect. And so really having that early design intent, again, just makes you much more powerful, and you're able to wield a lot more information later on in the project instead of learning it when you're already expected to start building.
Yeah. Have you always had this interest in the technology side of the business?
Yeah, honestly, I think so. I think it's twofold. Yes, but it serves my purpose, so that has reinforced it. Because as a field engineer, one of my most powerful tools to show I understand things and to be useful to people was to be in the model. And so it's a positive feedback loop of this is making me useful, so I need to be good at it, so I like it.
Yes.
And this kind of repeats itself.
Well, it's interesting because you were talking about your credibility and things like that. But I would imagine that going from field engineer to superintendent, having that understanding of the importance of the technology and being able to use it, that really weighed quite heavily in your promotion from a field engineer to a superintendent. Would you say that has a role to play?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was kind of getting my foot in the door on credibility because I was very confident in it and not a lot of other people could do it. So if folks needed, a field foreman looked at 5 superintendents and they had a question about checking something in the model to make sure something was supposed to not be clashing, someone's in the wrong spot, they pretty much had one choice and it was me, which is great. Because that they had to come and talk to me and ask me for help. And that really is very powerful. I really can't explain any way around other than, yes, it was a differentiator that got my foot in the door for them to realize, hey, this person is helpful.
Yeah.
And this person can give me something and can show me something. And then from there, our relationship is building. But it's that first foot in the door for sure.
No, that's beautiful. I appreciate that. One of the major concerns of the industry, we were talking about this a little earlier with the psychological safety, is just with the mental health. How are you and DPR addressing mental health on job sites? And what kind of resistance have you encountered to that?
Yeah, this is something that is so important in construction. And I think the resistance really comes from shame and the stigma around it. Mm-hmm. Everyone likes to think that they're strong and that they don't need help. And I think, again, construction is full of very prideful, proud people of what they do. Mm-hmm. And that is a strength. But in instances like this, it can be something that naturally causes resistance. There are many steps that we're taking to address it. There's active steps like openly talking about it, sharing stories. We do all hand safety meetings with everyone on site and we'll share stories about this. And we'll have other trades foremen come up and share stories about folks in the trades that they have known that have had mental health issues or have fortunately taken their lives. And it's bringing awareness to mental health and the risk of suicide in our industry. Something that was really eye-opening to me. I'm a numbers person. I like numbers and I like understanding statistics and stuff, but the construction industry has one of the highest suicide rates among all industries. It's 4 times the national average. It is really high, which is crazy. And we spend all this time, we talked about physical safety, ladders, electrocution, falls, all these things. We spend a lot of time, like OSHA has developed all these rules. We have all these regulations, all these permits and paperwork you have to do to ensure that we are physically safe on site. But suicide is 5 times greater than all other construction fatalities combined. So if we take all the falls that happen in construction and we take all the falls off ladders, electrocutions, all the fatalities in construction, we combine them, suicide is 5 times greater than that. And that is crazy.
Why do you think that is?
I think it has to do with, this is a very high pressure industry. Like we are always going really fast. There's a lot of overtime work. There's a lot of need to hit dates. And when we do that, we're taking people away from getting enough sleep, enough rest, enough time with their families, enough time to prioritize stuff outside of work. In addition to that, it's physically demanding. A lot of these folks have to work to be able to provide.
Yes.
When you're putting your body to that physical demand, I think we are also more prone to try and perhaps mitigate that with other substances to be able to come up and show up to work every day and be in strong enough physical health, whether that means you're numbing yourself using something else, which can ultimately play a role in overdosing. But I think there's a lot of things with just how much mental and physical pressure we see on a job site and what we put our craft through. Again, it kind of goes back to that whole morale as well and the culture on site of knowing you're coming to a good community on site, a good family on site that's going to treat you like a human. Because if you combine all that physical and mental stress, and then you put yourself in a really bad environment too, where it feels like you're treated like trash every day, like that's just a concoction of something that's not good, that is affecting a lot of people. And so it is really important that we're talking about it, that there are resources that, again, and kind of in line with people being comfortable to come up and tell you that they're struggling with something. It's having the right reaction to that, the right response to be able to actually listen and not brush it off and hear people's concerns. But it is still something that is super prevalent and that needs to be talked about more, because the statistics are absolutely crazy when you really look at it, that 5 times greater than all construction fatalities combined is mind-boggling.
It is. What hard conversations are superintendents not having that they should be having on job sites?
This is a good question. I think it's twofold. I think it's having conversations with craft. As a superintendent, it can get harder and harder to stay in tune with the craft. The more you get into more meetings and more owner and client relationships, I find myself having to remind myself, like, hey, my job at the end of the day is to serve the field. And so me spending 8 hours in meetings, yes, it's necessary, but I need to find a way to balance that with spending time out in the field and hearing the craft. So it's reminding ourselves to have conversations with all the guys, and not just like, hey, that work is incorrect, we need to redo that. But it's, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? What are you doing this weekend? Like appreciating the work they do, telling them that looks great instead of always telling people only when things are wrong. Because I think we sometimes have the tendency to do that.
Yeah.
We come onto job sites and it's so easy to be like, oh no, we need to patch that. Oh no, that's in the wrong spot. We need to open up the drywall there. Hey, this is too messy. Come put up barricades here. Like it's so easy to walk a job site and be very critical. And yes, those are all things that need to get fixed. And yes, we should be talking about them, but we also have to balance that with also being like, holy moly, that looks awesome. You guys are doing a great job. Yeah. Or like, wow, like the finish on that is amazing. And like appreciating what they're doing out there and letting them know that regularly. Yes, people will sometimes be like, hey, we should have more barbecues and all these things for appreciation, but I'd like to think it's more of a daily action.
Definitely.
It's not the barbecue at the end of the job where everyone's like, yay, we put you through hell for the last year.
Yeah, right. Here, have a sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes it somehow all better. It's the daily action, I think, of setting the culture on site. And that starts with the supers. I think the other side of it is that we have to be mindful of is at the end of the day, the superintendent drives the schedule, which ultimately drives the safety, stress, and pressure of the job. And the bottom line is when the field is feeling crunched and stacked and like the pressure is super high and we're not spending the time to appreciate what's going on, the morale and safety is going to drop. And that is really stems from my job, ultimately. It's a lot of pressure to put on superintendents, but when we plan better and we are putting all this effort into the plan to make sure that we are not crunched at the end. And yes, there's also going to be a little bit of OT needed or a little bit of crunch time, but it shouldn't last for months and months and months. We are planning something wrong if we are forcing people to be working out of their brain. Like there's something wrong there. And so it's structuring the job, being mindful of what we are asking of our people, because at the end of the day, they are people. It's not just, yes, let's work 12-hour days, but I'm going to go home at 3 and I'll see you again in the morning.
Yeah.
It's being mindful of what we're putting our people through and balancing that, and then being able to have the difficult conversation. Like, yes, people don't want to hear that it's going to take a little bit longer, that we need other resources or we need to bring more people in. But if that's what the job needs, ultimately, if something were to happen catastrophic on the job because we're pushing people too fast, that's really the conversation we don't want to have. Is like, hey, we had a fatality on our project because we were stacking everyone. Like, that is the worst conversation we could possibly have. And so we need to be taking some proactive measures to make sure that doesn't happen. And yes, there's a little pay up front, but the consequence at the end is way worse if we are not doing that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that really falls on the superintendent in my...
For college students who are interested in construction, but they lack trade experience, what's your advice for building credibility and adding value on a job site?
My personal approach, and I would recommend this to anyone that wants to go the field route, is to be the first to volunteer to be in the trenches. Show up for work, show up and have that attitude and show people you want to work, because at the end of the day, people will teach you if they see that you're going to be right next to them. Right. And they will be more likely to open up to you if they know that this person is going to be right next to them, right by their side. You don't even have to ask them. Be the first one to volunteer. Be the first one to show up. If there is a 4 a.m. concrete pour, you're there. It really is just about attitude and coming to work ready and showing up. I think also we touched on it a little bit earlier, but finding what makes you useful.
It's very good.
For me, it was leveraging that technology, and that really is what I found made me useful. And you don't want to kind of put people in boxes of this is all they can do, or it comes down to this skill set, but it is important. That's just fact of the matter. Is you need to find something that makes you useful and that people want to go to you for. And then from there, the rest will come and you'll develop the relationship, and then they'll just know you as a person to be able to come to you. But it starts with that first, what can you give them? What can you show them? What can you give them? What can you go out of your way to help them with? And after that, the rest will come.
That's interesting. So where do you see the role of the superintendent evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, particularly as more tech-savvy leaders enter the field?
I'd like to think the role of the superintendent won't change too much. The tools we're using are changing, but the role and the responsibility stays the same. The accountability stays the same. At the end of the day, the job that needs to get done is the same. So I think the tools needed are changing, and I think we're seeing those tools evolve. And what a superintendent needed as a tool 10 years ago is changing from what a superintendent needs to be able to wield today, and it will change again in the next decade. And so it's something that I'm having to remind myself in, and it pains me because I told myself when I first started I would never become this type of superintendent. But it's staying adaptable and not getting complacent. I am already feeling that I am starting to lose touch with some of the new technology. Even though I'm a very tech-forward savvy superintendent, we've got college students coming out that are wielding AI now and using a lot of AI in their work. And that is something that I am less experienced in. And I already feel like I started to get a little complacent in, I'm a tech-savvy super, but it's not always going to be that way. In 10 years, that might just be the average, and then suddenly that's not a skill and tool I can really say makes me stand out anymore. And so I'm having to remind myself to not get complacent and to stay fluid and adaptable and to continuously learn so that I can evolve along with the entire generation and role of superintendent.
Well, this has been really interesting, Erin. I really appreciate your time. Let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
If you had to start your career and do it all over again, knowing what you know now, what's one thing you would do differently?
Oof, that's a tough one. And I say that because it hasn't been fully linear. And so I think all the little dips and turns that I have made are what make me into who I am. And so I think it's important that I spent a little time as a PE, because I think now it makes me more effective when I'm working with PEs. I understand what they're coming from or what they have as their foundation. And so I wouldn't necessarily change hey, right out of college, I should have gone straight into a field engineer program. I think that time as a PE was important for me. And I think a lot of the mistakes that I've made, which I think most people would be like, oh, I would just erase some of my biggest mistakes. I think those are actually defining features of me learning how to be a more effective superintendent. So this is probably kind of corny, but I can't really think of something that I would really want to change, because I think they have shaped me the way I need to have been shaped to be the effective superintendent that I am.
Yeah, awesome. It's actually a very good answer, because there is a lot of insight in that. I appreciate that. Erin, thank you for joining us here today on Construction Genius. Yeah, I wish you all the best with your career.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.